Let's bring up our first speaker. Dr. Kutsch has dedicated his career to seeking out and developing new ideas that focus on excellent patient care. Dr. Kutsch currently serves as the CEO of Oral Biotech and maintains a private practice in Albany, Oregon. He's an inventor holding numerous patents for dental materials and oral health technologies. He publishes regularly in magazines, journals, and textbooks, and he's the founder of the World Congress of Minimally Invasive Dentistry and the Academy of Laser Dentistry. He conducts independent biofilm research on the bacteria that causes cavities and developed the Caries-free system, which we all know about, for the early identification, diagnosis, and elimination of decay to promote a lifetime of health. It's with great pride and an honor that I present to you Dr. Kutsch.
Thank you. And thank you, Jackie, and it's certainly a privilege for me to be here with you all this morning, and I really want to thank you. The first thing I want to do is thank you for coming. It's 8 o'clock, and we're in Vegas, and it's Saturday morning, and the topic is dental caries, and anytime I do a lecture on dental caries, I'm always surprised when anybody shows up. But so I really appreciate the fact that you're here. We're going to have fun this morning. My program, we're going to cover a variety of topics, and then we're going to have a little interaction because there's a few things that I want you to be able to utilize, and if you do it once or twice, there's a better likelihood that Monday, when you get back into your offices and you're sitting with a patient, that you may attempt to try it. So we're talking about behavioral change here. We're talking about behavioral change for ourselves as well. So if my mouse will work, it did a minute ago. Here we go. I think it has jet lag. You heard the introduction. My mission is really to reduce dental caries and reduce the suffering from dental caries. It's the #1 disease in the world in all age brackets in every country. 35% of the people on this planet right now, as we're sitting here, have untreated decay in their mouth. In some countries, like China, it's 100%. It's universal. So it's a real problem. And when I graduated from dental school in 1979, let's try 79. I look pretty good for my age, don't I? When I graduated in 1979, they told me in 30 years, whatever it is you're going to do in dentistry, you better do in the next 30 years, because 30 years from now, there won't be dentists. We won't need them because there won't be any decay. Because fluoride is going to cure this disease. And in fact, in the early 1980s, we closed down 10 of the dental schools and we cut the enrollment by 20% because we as a profession believed 30 years down the road we were going to have a dramatically decreased demand for our care and our services. And what's happened in the last 34 years, then if my math is correct, is that this decay, the rate of decay is going up in the United States. And we hear how we're winning the battle of decay, but when you look at the statistics, particularly on our children, our 0 to 5-year-old children, the decay rate is going up in double digits every 4-year reporting period. And that's significant because we have a generation, my children, and you probably some of your children, and maybe some of you sitting in this room, who are in their 25 to say 40, that have never had a cavity and probably never will. And now my grandchildren, the next generation, have got more decay than I had as a child. So something's happening. And that's really what my mission is all about, to try and change that. Simon Sinek wrote a book a couple of years ago. I don't know if you've read this. It's an incredible book. It says, start with why. And his premise is that people don't buy what we do. They connect with us and buy why we do it. And so I think it's really important for us as dental professionals to be really clear about why we do what we do. Why do I go to the office on Monday morning? Why do I help people? What is it about that makes me a better person? Why do I do that? Why am I here today? And so if we understand and we're clear about what our mission is and why we do what we do, we have a better opportunity to connect with our patients and really, truly help them. So my why is this is a global epidemic, and I'm not okay with that. Oral Biotech is my third dental company. I sold the first two as I developed them. People call me an entrepreneur. I don't see myself as an entrepreneur, I see myself as a dentist. But after you've started your 4th company, you have a problem. So I admitted that. So my mission is really with oral biotech is to try and reduce the decay rate and stop the suffering. The challenge that I had was in 2001, I just finished a 3-year sabbatical working in the industry, and I came back to my private practice. That's who I am, that's what I do, that's why I live. And I was frustrated that my patients were still getting decay. I was doing everything that I had been trained to do, and they were following and being compliant or adhering or participating or whatever word you choose to use, and yet they were still getting decay. And I thought, I'm a failure at this. If I was good, they would stop getting decay. And so I went on to develop myself as an expert. I wanted to learn everything I could about this disease, to understand it, to figure out if I could find a better way to treat people. And that really spawned Carie-Free and oral biotech. And that's why I'm here today. So we have this pandemic. It's getting worse, not better. And it's really, we're not going to drill and fill our way out of this. You can't drill and fill fast enough. We got children at the poverty level. We can't afford to take these kids to the OR every 20 months and redo their fillings. What sense does that make? That's stupid. We need to figure out what's causing this disease and fix that instead. It's like instead of getting a bigger mop and bucket, we need to turn the faucet off. So that's kind of the philosophy of where I'm coming from this morning. So this is not okay with me, and I believe that it's our problem to solve. The government is not going to solve this for us. And the American people and the people worldwide are looking to us, the dental professionals, help us figure out how to control this disease. So it's on us. So that's the mission that we're taking. Now, so what's causing this pandemic? Well, when I was in dental school a very long time ago, I was taught that this was a disease of mutans streptococci and lactobacillus. How many people here learned that? I got to tell you, a lot of our colleagues still believe that. That's a paradigm. I get emails from dentists that say, why are you doing this? This is just a disease of mutans streptococci, pure and simple. And I'm like, this disease model has become so much more complex and has changed so much. And I want to share that disease model with you this morning so that you're all up to date on that. Then I want to talk a little bit about how we use the forms and the things that I do in my practice and how you might be able to implement that in yours. And then the last thing I want to do is talk about wellness coaching. And I know that Ferocia was here yesterday, Ferocia Knight. How many people attended her class? She's an amazing individual, and that has changed my life in terms of coaching, helping coach my patients. So I want to talk about that. So we originally thought it was a disease of mutans streptococci and lactobacillus. We now know it's a biofilm disease, and I'm going to share with you the latest science on that. So it's bacteria is one of the suspects. One of the suspects is diet. Another suspect is saliva. And this is something that I'm going to share quite a bit of information with you. This has really been developing in the last 3 years. Genetics. We have determined through studies more and more genetic probabilities that increase the risk for a person's decay, risk for decay. Now, I can't change your DNA, but that means if I can begin to identify some of these things, or if you see a pattern of decay that you just can't find the suspect, start thinking maybe this is a genetic condition and we just need to figure out how to overcome their risk. Does that make sense? So I'm going to share with you some of those. And of course, at the end of the day, this is really a disease of pH. Dental caries is a disease of prolonged periods of low pH in the mouth that result in net mineral loss from the teeth. And it's bacterial mediated. It's not erosion, it comes from the bacteria. You've got the wrong bacteria or they're behaving badly. So we need to start looking for the patterns. Instead of trying to identify 50 different risk categories and go through this complicated maze to sort out how we can target our therapies and create personalized medicines for our patients, we need to just start recognizing quickly major patterns of this disease. Now, this patient came to me. By the way, all the patients that you're going to see today are people, teeth. These are all my patients in Albany, Oregon. This patient came to me a number of years ago. Her dentist, 1 year previous, had treated her with 6 anterior porcelain fused and metal crowns. A year later, only 4 of them survived, and before I got to see her a second appointment, only 3 of them had survived. Now, you look at that, and I kind of just shook my head. But see, the dentist, this was a what? What was going on, right? What does she have? But it's not a what problem. And then it's a, they did how. They restored them with crowns. That's how we were taught to treat this disease, but it's not a how problem. The problem this patient has, and that we fail to address, is why. Why does this patient's mouth look like this? Because if you can get that answer, you can help this person. And if we don't know why their mouth looks like that, it's going to break down. It's just pure and simple. And you guys see this in your own practice. I'm sure that you all have patients that you're frustrated with because in spite of your best efforts and everything you do, you continue to see them break down. Anybody have a patient like that? You can think of, you know who they are. I mean, you can probably sit here right now and identify by name 6 patients in your practice that you struggle with. And every time you see their name on the schedule, you think, I wonder what's going to happen today, right? And it's frustrating for them and it's frustrating for us. So let's talk about this disease model and how much it's changed in the last few years. We know that it has multiple pathogens. We know that it has systemic effects. Last year I was here and I did an entire program on the systemic effects from dental caries. And we know that it also has hereditary conditions as well. Hereditary risk factors. Yesterday I was with individuals who are working on developing a chairside real-time test for interleukin-1, just by chance. He said, do you know about interleukin-1? Well, let me tell you about that and periodontal disease and how we believe that is related to systemic inflammatory disease. I think we as a group would all agree on that, right? Although a lot of our colleagues still think all that data is coincidental, and I hear that. Oh, that's just coincidence. Not in my mind. But so you look at these characteristics, and what does that remind you of? Periodontal disease, right? Multiple pathogens, has systemic effects, has genetic factors. I mean, so we're talking about dental caries and periodontal disease are both biofilm diseases, and they have these things in common. Shouldn't be a surprise to us, right? So they're both difficult to treat. Biofilm diseases are the most difficult diseases for us to treat. 2/3 of the diseases left that we're struggling with treating in mankind are biofilm diseases. These bacteria are incredibly complex. So as we look at the multiple pathogens, there are now over 50 bacteria that we've identified in research in the last 10 years that's become more complex. This is just from this year earlier. Propionibacteria acidifaciens, they looked at 26 healthy individuals and 26 high caries risk individuals, and they did a panel of 43 different bacteria. They checkerboarded it, and the one bacteria that stood out that was present in the people that had a lot of decay was Propionibacteria acidifaciens. That's a new bug that we're now considering plays a role in dental caries. Now, I presented some of this information last year, and there hasn't really been a lot of development on it, but some of these studies come from the last 7 or 8 years, but most of them come out of Japan. And what we know based on, they took 300 plaque samples from people that were having open heart surgery. And what they found was they started looking, they asked the question, gee, we see that there are periodontal pathogens in the arterial and the plaque on the heart valves. I wonder what other oral bacteria might be there. And when they found that, the number one bacteria, when it was found in the mouth, was found 78% of the time on the heart valve and the artery was mutans streptococci. And the conclusion of the study is most bacteremias and most of these problems, by comparison, the presence of periodontal pathogens in these studies was negligible. So please understand, I'm not telling you that periodontal disease doesn't play a role and this is being caused by dental caries, but I think it brings to mind that it's maybe more complex than we originally thought. Having an overload of bacteria in your mouth can't be healthy. I think we'd all agree with that. So it's positive for strep mutans. Now the first studies that started to come out on genetics, and this study came out of Pittsburgh 3 years ago, and they took 300 individuals, they looked for polymorphisms, that's genetic variations, for beta-defensin 1. It's a bacteriolytic enzyme found in the saliva. It's a protective enzyme. And they found that the people that had the G20A variant of this gene had 5 times the DMFT scores of the other individuals. 5 times. So if you have a defective beta-defensin 1 enzyme in your saliva, that puts you at very high risk for dental caries. Now, I can't test that yet, right? But at least I need to be aware of the fact there may be some genetics playing a role in here. Here's a person who brushes and flosses, they have a good diet, and they have plenty of saliva, and they continue to come to see me with decay. Has anybody seen a patient like that? And you scratch your head. I get calls from dentists and hygienists saying, I don't know what to make of this. I can't figure out what's going on. Consider the possibility it might be genetic. And we know that taste, this is another study on genes. They looked at the TAS2R38 gene. We call these kids super tasters. They're highly sensitive to phenol. They're the kids that won't eat Brussels sprouts and broccoli and asparagus and cauliflower and kale. I was one of those kids. When the study came out, I called my mother and I said, I was not a bad child. I was a super taster. Damn it. And the reality is, this gene loses its expression. I mean, I literally sat as a child at the dinner table and watched my mother and my father and my sister eat Brussels sprouts, and I thought, what amazes me the most is not that I don't like them, I can't imagine how anybody could eat that. It tastes so pungent and foul. And anybody else a super taster in here? See? You're around. Now, this is the interesting thing. If you haven't tried Brussels sprouts for a while, at about mid-age 40s, you lose the expression of this gene. And today, my #1 favorite vegetable of all time, I could eat it at every meal, I absolutely love it, is Brussels sprouts. God has a very weird sense of humor. But we know that those increase the risk for dental caries. Matrix metalloproteinases, these are the enzymes that are found in dentin that break down the protein in dentin. And we've identified a genetic variation of MMP13, this gene for this proteinase, right, that reduces the risk for decay. If you've got a defective enzyme doesn't break down the dentin, you're less likely to have decay. MMP13, another study was just out this last year, looking at human leukocyte antigen, DQ2. Adolescents that had this were dramatically at lower risk for dental caries. White blood cell antigens. So now just start adding these things up. We're talking about bacteriolytic enzyme, matrix metalloproteins, taste buds, leukocyte antigens, and then this study came out in January earlier this year, and I have to tell you, this is amazing research. They looked at 500, it was a genome association-wide study. We have the computer power now to look at 1 million genes at a time on patients. In this study, they looked at 920 adults, age 18 to 75. They looked at 518,000 gene sites and tried to find if there was a correlation between any gene and decay rate. And what they found was that there were 10 major associations between individual genes and tooth decay. But what was more interesting was they found that different genes were associated with geographic patterns of decay in the mouth. So it's like dental caries is not dental caries, and this is a huge paradigm shift for us. So it turns out that so they made DMFS1, DMFS2, 3, 4, and 5. And this DMFS2 is associated with cavities only found on the mandibular incisors. Have you ever seen a patient like that? I never had. And it's like, these are the last men standing. These are the teeth that are bathed in saliva all day. If a person has 6 teeth left, which ones are they? If they have 2 teeth left, which ones are they? See, we all know that. And then to tell me that these are the only teeth in the mouth that got decay? I read the study and I thought, well, that's interesting. Never seen that. But it's interesting. 2 weeks later, this patient is referred to me by a pediatric dentist who said, I don't know what to do. This young girl, she's 14, we've refilled her mandibular incisors 3 times. And she continues to get decay. That's the only decay she's ever had. So they sent her to me. I looked at the mother and I said, she has a Lysol 2 deficiency. And the mother looks at me. She goes, the pediatric dentist told me you would know what the problem was. I wouldn't have if I hadn't read this study. But The mother, when I said it's probably a genetic condition, she said, I had the same problem as a child. Case study of 2, right? But you start to look for these kind of things and you see them, and I've started to actually photograph these different geographic patterns because I never connected it before. So it's interesting, the AJAP1 gene also is highly associated with a different DMS pattern. This patient just came to me this last month. She's 15 years old, she has 17 crowns, 4 root canals, she needs 4 more crowns. She's seen 3 different dentists, and the mother said, can you help us? We heard about you, can you help us? And I said, what's going on here? Is it, we went through, nobody has ever stopped to say, what do you eat? What do you drink? Tell us about your home care. Nobody's ever asked them. They just continue to put crowns and root canals on this 15-year-old's teeth, right? And she has great home care. It's probably genetic. It's probably the AJAP1 gene. And I discussed that with the mother, and now we just have to figure out how to balance that. But by looking at these things, it's like it helps us create personalized medicine. Everybody follow that? If you can't figure out why that person's mouth looks like that, we can't solve it. This is a person who has decay only, this is the DMFS3, only has decay, and there were 5 genes associated with this. I mean, just random genes that had strong associations with this pattern of decay. It was on mandibular posterior teeth only. And I started looking at these, and I see patients go, oh, whoa, hang on just a second, you're a DMFS3, let me get my camera. It's like, I hadn't even seen, you just don't see them until you learn that. But you're going to start looking for this. This is the DMFS4 has only decay on their maxillary incisors. It's the only decay in this person's mouth, right? And you see these things every day, but you don't make the association. You go, oh, you've got cavities, we need to fill them. I mean, that's what we're trained to do, right? We want to stop and ask why. But if you start to see things like this, it's interesting. You may be dealing with a genetic association. Now, the one thing that I want to share with you, and this has really changed our concept of biofilms in treating diseases, and this has an impact for periodontal disease as well. Lizzie Buchan in Nature magazine 3 years ago, 2010, published a revolutionary idea. Her proposal was that we stop looking at individual bacteria in the biofilm. It doesn't really matter because biofilms behave as one organism. They behave as a superorganism, if you will. I know it's a revolutionary thought. But instead of worrying about which particular bacteria here and which level, let's forget about that. Let's look at what the overall biofilm is doing because it behaves as a superorganism. These bacteria, and this is where we put the sex in the show, these bacteria have sex. And they share their DNA. If there's a bacteria in a biofilm that's resistant to an antibiotic or antimicrobial agent, within 30 minutes, every bacteria in that biofilm is resistant. And I'm talking about bacteria that aren't even in the same genus. They share it. We estimate at the moment that 30% of the DNA in a given bacteria in a biofilm wasn't their own. You follow me here? It's kind of a scary thought. So when you start, you carry that out, and then we get to Takahashi and Neved this last year that published this paper in 2013. They did a genome, because of our genomic capabilities to study, they said, study biofilms, it's no longer important which bacteria are present. Doesn't matter. What we need to look at is which genes are present, because they get spread throughout the entire biofilm. Doesn't matter what the bacterial genus and species is. What matters is which gene is there, and which genes are being expressed, and which genes, what is the metabolic output as a result of those genes. So in the case of dental caries, it's acid. So they're telling us, stop worrying about don't even worry which bacteria are there. We can really get to a point where we'll be able to measure which genes are present. But at the end of the day, when I said earlier, at the end of the day, it's Kaiser-Sose, it's all about pH. What really matters is what is the biofilm doing? And if it's producing prolonged periods of low pH, we have dental caries, regardless of which bacteria are present. Because bacteria adapt to survive. And we know that what we used to, 3 years ago, the 4 bacteria, the early colonizers, we considered to be the gold standard for healthy commensal bacteria. Within 30 minutes of the time of being an acidic biofilm, join the party and produce acid just as fast as all the rest of them. They have to or die. So they have that ability. They've been here for 6 billion years. We individually are bacterial planets. 90% of the cells sitting in your chair are not human, right? We would not survive without our bacteria. So we need to start looking at this thing entire. So I mean, this creates a huge paradigm shift for us in terms of how we look at it and how we want to treat this disease. So caries management by risk assessment. Anybody here doing caries risk assessment in their practice? That's awesome. Represents a quantum leap forward. Instead of asking how many cavities you have, I'm asking why do you have cavities? That's a simple but huge chasm in difference. I want to know why your mouth looks like that. So we came up with a caries risk assessment form. This came out of research done by John Featherstone. It's the best validated form that's available to us. And then we altered it so that it could be used well in private practice. And this is the form that I use in my practice every day. Every patient gets this form once a year filled out. Every new patient gets it filled out. Because I'm trying to find out, why do your teeth look like? I'm trying to answer the why. The first 3 questions at the top are behavioral questions. Are you interested in having a screening today? Are you interested in talking about it if you screen high? Would you be willing to make any behavioral changes if you have this disease? So right away, the first thing I know, the patient tells me where I'm at on the motivational interview scale. Okay? Simple, they fill that out. Now, it used to be that we would have the hygienists who have so much time, extra time. I mean, they have an entire hour. I mean, we used to have them sit and interview the patient and fill this out, and, this would take, 15 minutes, and my hygienist still had an extra 15 minutes of time at the end of the hour appointment, right? If we squeeze one more thing into that 1-hour model, hygienist heads are going to explode. I'm not going to hang on that cross. I'm not going to try and change that model, but it needs to be changed because we can't continue to add responsibilities and duties and keep squeezing it into that hour and expect that we're going to have quality care. So what we did was we changed it. I said, this is a capacity issue. Hygienists don't have that time. No wonder they don't want to fill this form out. They're struggling to get everything done that we're already asking them to do. I'd be the same way. So we got the patients to self-identify their risk factors and report them to us. I can't tell you, nothing could be more extremely different. Me trying to interview you and tell you of something I see in your mouth that you don't think you have versus you self-identifying, you know what, I do have a dry mouth. I wake up in the morning, sometimes my mouth is dry. That person now not only accepts the fact they have a problem, they expect me to talk about it. So instead of me trying to convince you have a problem you don't think you have, now you're reporting a problem to me and you're expecting me to do something about it. Have the conversation. I got to tell you, that was like a world of change in my practice. And it eliminated the hygienists don't have to spend any time on this form. The patient fills it out. And then we come in and we identify disease indicators, and we use a biometric. That's ATP bioluminescence. That's a 15-second swab. I'm sure that some of you in the room are doing that already. And this is exciting news. If you hadn't heard this yet already, I wanted to share this with you today. We have new CDT codes for 2014 for caries risk assessment, for filling out the form with a valid, recognized assessment form or tool. The first company, now you're not going to have coverage for this on every patient on January 1, but I would report to you that the first insurance company, it's a branch of Delta in Massachusetts that's going to create product for this, are going to reimburse offices $50 just to fill this form out. She said, what do you think about that? I can't get dentists to fill out this form. I said, if you pay them $50, you better have a big truck because you're going to get forms all day long, right? And the beauty of this is they believe by doing that, patients are going to get better care. We're going to have better treatment outcomes. So there's value in that. Wellness coaching helps the patient understand their own why. Why are you here? Why do you want to do this? What will the benefit be for you? Because the patient doesn't understand or doesn't have a motivation to treat it or to improve their health, what's going to happen? It's not going to change. It takes a lot of motivation. Anybody here try to change their own behavior on anything? You know, we had this idea that Behavioral change takes 28 days to start a new habit, and then what we heard from Michael Roizen last year from the Cleveland Clinic takes 9 months. And the first 6 months, daily contact. Okay, well, I'm not going to call you every morning at 7 a.m. to remind you to floss, right? But we need to create models and tools for patients so that they can implement those in their lives to make those kind of changes. And that's coming. And some of that will be digital. It might be a text message or an email, right? They'll have the choice. It might be an app for their new iPhone 5 or 5S or whatever it is. You know, that it might be an app that they can apply and they can actually choose and create this for themselves. If you want to read a really good book on wellness coaching, I've been studying wellness coaching and actually just became certified as a certified professional coach earlier this year. This is a great textbook. It's kind of a standard, and it deals with wellness coaching in healthcare. Now, Ferocia has just finished a book, and she's been working on it for several years, and it will probably become the standard. She's going to change wellness coaching, and I'm going to share with you how that's changing this morning. But we know that looking at studies that continue to come in on coaching, that it works. And a lot of these are in indigenous Native people, tribes in Canada, tribes in the U.S., you know, where the 80% of the disease is found in a lot of instances. Low socioeconomic environments. And what they found is that by doing this, client-based, centered, patient-centered communication makes a difference. Now, in a lot of the studies, it appears that if we spend time to do like motivational interview techniques with a young mother, we can actually reduce the decay rate in the children. But it takes at least 4 sessions like that to make that happen. Anybody here currently coaching their patients in practice? That's awesome. And that's going to change. We are all, I see the problem for me was, why did I do that? Why did I end up in coaching? Because I developed logically the best diagnostic regimen that I could. I've developed the best biometric that I could find. Then I developed the best antimicrobial agents, the best designed products that I could conceive of based on our knowledge of this disease. And I created all of those. And then we got to the last piece of the puzzle, and it may require the patient to do something different. And I can tell you to floss. I can tell you need to floss. I can tell you should floss twice a day. Does that make people floss? No, we've been doing that for years. What a waste of time, right? That doesn't move any behavioral change. And so I sat there and I thought, well, then now the last piece of this is going to fail because I don't know how to get the patient to change their behavior. I don't have that skill. So I went out to find it and study it, and it's wellness coaching. And it's easy, and I thought, when we started this journey, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do that. How are my hygienists now going to spend 30 minutes coaching the patient in that hour after they spent 15 minutes filling out the form? Just forget the prophies, you know. Skip the x-rays, you know, but I mean, you look at it and you go, how am I as a dentist with my overhead going to sit down for 30 minutes with a patient and coach them and charge them $500 and have them happily pay me for that time, right? I mean, how's that going to happen? How's that going to work? And I struggle with that. And Ferocia has come up with a new model for us. We've been working on this for a year. But here's one of the things that this study was published, I think, in 2012, that when I read the study, it was kind of sobering. Getting somebody to change their behavior around sugar is more difficult than getting them to change their behavior with alcohol. Sugar is more addictive than alcohol. Americans eat, and I still haven't done this, but I'm going to. The hygienists in the room would love this. Americans eat an average of 22.7 teaspoons of sugar a day. Do you know what that looks like? You know, it's like a cup of sugar. I want to put it in a little baggie, get up here and pour it out and go, that's how much, does anybody volunteer to come eat this sugar right here? Yet that's what we consume on average in America every day. We consume 51 pounds of high fructose corn syrup on average per year in America. Mexico's, by the way, is number 2 at 32 pounds. We consume, so part of the problem we got is our diet. Well, it's like, well, duh. You know, you look at us, our body shapes are changing, right? High fructose corn syrup isn't metabolized in the mouth. I thought for a while maybe that's what's driving this disease in a population, but it's not metabolized in the mouth. It's metabolized in the liver. The studies that have been done indicate it was the least carcinogenic of any of the sugars. So it's not that, but we're still eating 22.7 teaspoons of sucrose every day, you know, or drinking Mountain Dew or drinking bottled water. How many people know this fact? You know what the pH of bottled water is? See, I thought it would be 7. It's water, right? Half of the bottled waters on the market have a pH of 4.0. Yeah, I know. I had the same reaction. Go Google pH bottled water. There's 4 or 5 different independent laboratories that have tested bottled waters. They label them by brand name and what their pH was. So I used to tell a patient, well, if you can't use this or you can't do that, just rinse your mouth with water. Just well use an acidic something else, right? Just well use Mountain Dew, right? Because this is a pH problem, and you can't treat a pH problem with acidic pH if the pH is already acidic, and that's the problem. Does that make sense? So if you're going to recommend to patients, at least help them, get the list, photocopy it, have it available to them so that you can help them. I tell patients, just drink tap water. That is 7.15, somewhere in that neighborhood in most communities. But there are bottled waters that are 7 and above, but you got to be careful. About half of them are 4.0. And you ask, why is that? I have no idea. You know, we'd have to ask the manufacturers, but it's crazy. So patients are drinking this, you know, bottled water at pH 4.0. I actually had a young dentist, contact me this last year, said, I mean, the guy is a health food nut. Honestly, brushes and flosses, incredible hygiene. He's had 3 new cavities in the last 2 years. He's a dentist. He knows how to floss. Flosses every day, right? Has an effective diet. This person is so healthy you can't believe it. And I said, we finally tracked this thing down. I said, well, what are you doing different? What's changed? Well, I bought this practice, and well, tell me what you do during the day. Well, I drink water all day long. Okay, well, that should be healthy. What's the pH of the water you're drinking? What do you mean? It's water. I go, well, let's go test it. Turned out he was drinking water all day long, sipping all day long, 4.0. That will change the behavior of your biofilm. That'll take somebody that's perfectly healthy and create new cavities in their mouth. Everybody with me on that? So you learned something today anyway. And Ferocia was here yesterday. I studied with Ferocia at the Brockman Institute, went through the programs. I would tell you, if you're interested in coaching, I don't think you can find a better place to study or a better coach. And I think the people that met her yesterday probably understand she's an amazing individual when it comes to coaching. I just happened to luck into that situation. There's 2 major coaching programs. I live in Oregon, by the way. I live in, like Albany, Oregon, which is 60 miles south of Portland. The other major coaching program is located in Florida. This one's in Portland, Oregon. So I called her with a very narrow need. We laugh about it now because, Ferocia, I don't know if you can help me. I have one very narrow need. I have patients that are high risk for getting cavities, and I just need to know how to help them change their behavior. That's all I want. That's all I need. And she said, I can do that. Great. So I showed up, and then within an hour, I'm like, oh my goodness. This is a life skill that applies to all of my patients, and applies to me, and applies to my family. So it's an incredible opportunity. Anyway, enough about that. We need to learn how to ask open-ended questions. See, because we ask, do you floss? What's the right answer to that question? Is there any patient that's honest with you and says, no? I have one patient, he's a physician. Kim, I floss twice a year. Pretty sure I know what day that is. You know, I mean, it's like, they know the right answer, so they don't want to look stupid, so they tell you, right? How many times do you floss per day? Maybe you're doing it wrong. We ask these kind of closed-ended questions, and it's how we're taught to do this. It's how we were trained. Do you do this? Do you do that? It's an inquisition. Instead, we need to ask open questions. What would you like to focus on? Right? What do you want to do? What's a priority to you in this situation? Right? Wouldn't that be nice if your physician said, what do you want to do today? What do you want to focus on? What is the thing that's bothering you most that you want to deal with, right? What would you be willing to change? So these are coaching questions, What would your benefit be if you did change, if you can identify that? And there's 2 phrases that we're going to practice today before this is over with. Number 1 is, what would you like to focus on? It's a really important question. Write this one down. We're going to practice it before you leave. Instead of asking them, you know, why are you here? How can I help you? All the things. It's the chief complaint that we were. Anybody remember chief complaint? What's your chief complaint? Well, what if I don't have a complaint? Why are you here? Those are all, we need to ask an open-ended question. What would you like to focus on? And number two, the last one here is tell me more about that. That's non-judgmental. You're going to have patients tell you some of the strangest things when you start asking these questions. What do you eat during the day? What do you drink during the day? People do weird things. And instead of going, oh, we need to go, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Right? No judgment on you whatsoever. So those are the two phrases. If you go, I just want you to go home and practice those with a patient. That's interesting. Tell me more about that. Say more. It doesn't say, it's not an inquisition. I'm asking you to, I'm interested. Tell me more about that. So Ferocia has worked out a new, so I told her, the hygienists don't have 30 minutes to do a coaching session. And a lot of coaching sessions are 60 minutes. I've been in 60-minute coaching sessions as I've coached people. That's all. I can't even find enough things to talk about for an hour, for crying out loud, right? 30 minutes is a long coaching session. Ferocia has, and that's the model for coaching, by the way. She has broken it down to 7 minutes. She actually has it down to 4 minutes. And you know what? I can coach somebody in 4 minutes. I have 4 minutes. I have 7 minutes. I'm talking to the patient for 4 minutes anyway, right? Now I'm having a more effective conversation. Everybody identify that? We have the time. And what if everybody in the practice, including the person at the front desk, the person who collects the money, the assistant, what if everybody in the practice had these skills? So you had a coaching type practice. So when the patient gets to the front desk, they've made this commitment, they're going to do this, and then they change their mind. And instead of saying, well, that's interesting, tell me more about that. Tell me why you're putting this off. Tell me what if the person at the front desk had those kind of skills to be able to coach that person for a couple of minutes? Might make a difference in helping them change their behavior. So this model is based on 5 E's. Envision, and I think the first one is very important. You need to envision this person. Did you hear this yesterday? Did she share this? So you need to see this person as a whole person. They're a person with a problem. They're not a problem. You need to see them whole and complete. Has anybody ever had the experience you weren't really sure about something you were doing, you weren't that confident in it, and somebody else said, oh, you are so good at that? Anybody have that experience? And it changed your behavior, didn't it? You had more confidence. Oh, I can do that. Yes, instead of being uncertain, we affect other people's behavior. We have that kind of impact on people. We need to educate them. It appears that you have periodontal disease. It appears that you have 5 to 7 millimeter bleeding pockets. Either you can use words like it appears that, or what I have found is, here's what I can do for you, and here's what you might be able to do to help yourself, to be part of a partner in the solution. Invite them in to solving it. Everybody with me so far? And then enroll them. You know, we need to ask them, what would you like to focus on? Based on what you just heard from me, what's most important to you? What would you like to do? Patients are smart. Typically, you know, I used to have this treatment plan that I would make up for every patient. I'd go into the consult, and I would have priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4. Anybody do that? We're going to treat these teeth first, this one second, this one third, and you know, and it's like, if we're going to do them all, does it really matter to me whether we do this one first or second? Right? And I let go of that and let the patient determine how we do this. I don't have to own that. And it's effective to allow, they make smart decisions. Typically, they pick number 1, right? And then we ask them, what do you think we should do to solve it? And they then, instead of me telling you, gee, it looks like you need to change this or change that, and you need to change both, which of these two, instead of saying, you need to do this first, asking the patient, saying, here's 2 things that you might think about changing to get to health, which one do you want to change first? Do you think that might be more effective in terms of them being able to make a change? You can only change 1 thing at a time. Do not make the mistake of trying to change 6 things at a time. I see programs where they say recommend chew 5 sticks of gum, then you want to rinse with this, and you want to floss, you want to change your diet, drink 2 things of this, then at lunchtime you want to, I see these, I wouldn't do that, right? I couldn't do that. You just want to change 1 thing at a time. So this is the new 7-minute coaching model. We can integrate that into practice. I'm going to give you one patient, and then we're going to just do a short exercise. The one thing that I want to stress is that behavioral change, human behavioral change is messy. We are complex organisms, and it's not linear. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and you're going to see this when you start coaching patients. It doesn't happen. Nobody makes a perfect behavioral change and hits one out of the park. It just doesn't work. I mean, occasionally you get somebody that's highly motivated that will do that, but typically. So this 38-year-old woman comes to see me. You kind of thinking maybe she is high risk for dental caries? Does she have a bacterial problem, saliva, diet? Well, right out of the gate, you're kind of looking, whoa, that's a lot of bacteria, right? I see cavities on her front teeth. So these are her radiographs. Obviously, she has some problems. And she's a dental phobic, by the way. On top of everything else, she's phobic. So, we go through the risk assessment form. She wants to do something about this. She is highly motivated. She's embarrassed of her teeth. She doesn't want her children to suffer with the same thing that she's had. She wants to change. So I'm like, great. Let's figure out why your teeth look like this. So we go through the form. She's high risk. She's high bacterial load. We're going to put her on an antimicrobial agent. So her diagnosis, turns out the usual suspects, she has 2. She has both a high bacterial load and she also has a dietary issue. So I've identified what's going on here. Number 1, she drinks Mountain Dew. You guys have seen this. I know you see this in your practice. She drinks Mountain Dew and she has poor hygiene. She doesn't brush and floss. So we need to make 2 changes here, right? So I can tell the patient, I can show her how to brush and floss, right? I can tell her you need to stop drinking Mountain Dew. Here's what you need to do to change your life. How effective is that? That doesn't work. I've been doing that for 30 years. That didn't work. So envision, I need to see her as this person with a problem. She's whole and complete. I can see her doing this. And I tell her that. I can see you accomplishing what you want here. Now I need to educate her. Here's what the problem is. Here's why your teeth look like this. Now, based on what I just told you, what do you want to focus on? Well, she wanted to save all of her teeth, and I want to stop getting cavities, and I don't want my children to have this. How would you go about this, right? So now I'm going to try and empower this person. How would you solve this? They're smart. She said, I'm going to give up Mountain Dew. I said, okay, let's just start with that. Let's give up Mountain Dew. How are you going to, now, rather than I'm going to give up Mountain Dew, the more specific that you can become helping that patient, so how are you going to do that? What are you going to replace it with? What will trigger you to know, what's your plan? Every day when at 10 o'clock you normally had a Mountain Dew, what are you going to do instead? Right? And how are you going to remind yourself? Because the more specific that we can become, the more likely that she'll be successful. And then, then what's her next change that she's going to make? It's going to be home care. That's what we'll do next after we're off the Mountain Dew. And then I go, and if we do all of this, what's your benefit? Why are you doing this? She's embarrassed of her teeth. She wants to have a healthy, confident smile. And I tell you, when you can help a person change like that, it's life-changing. This is an emotional, life-changing event for people. So here's ReCare. This is 2010. We're making some progress a year later. I haven't even filled these teeth yet. We're just working on trying to get things. I did extract a tooth. Here we've made some restorations. She's actually made a little improvement in her home care. I mean, this is a year later. Here we are. Oops. Here we are in 2012, and now she's worse again. So we talked about home care again. How can I help you? What can I do to support you to make this change? Let's talk about specifics. Tell me, how are you going to do this? And she came in April. And that's the cleanest I've ever seen her mouth. And we celebrated that. She sat down, opened her mouth, and I spontaneously said, wow. And she smiled, had a big smile on her face. She said, I knew you would be excited. Right? Got to tell you. And then they give you a hug, and it's just like, oh, man, that's what I get out of bed in the morning for. So this is the exercise. I want you to pick the person sitting right next to you, and I know you hopefully you know them. If you don't, that's even better yet. We have, for just 2 minutes, I want you to interview this person and ask them what they would like to focus on. And you can either create a case scenario where, gee, I just found that you have all these bleeding pockets. What would you like to focus on? And then as the person explains that to you, I want you to try the phrase, tell me more about that. Okay? We got 2 minutes and then we're going to switch. So one person is going to be the coach, one person is going to be the coachee. Okay, that was 2 minutes. Wow. And you probably learned a lot of things in just 2 minutes, didn't you? So I want to hear from one person who was the coach and used the phrase, what would you like to focus on? Anybody? Any volunteers? One person? Somebody help me out here. One person was a coach. Yes. Did you use the word, what would you like to focus on? How'd that feel?
It felt good.
Yeah.
It felt focusing.
It felt focusing. It's amazing, isn't it?
And I didn't feel on the hot seat or
Right.
needed to persuade. I was just gathering information and letting Anna share with me what was important to her.
Yeah. So if you didn't hear that, this person said, I was no longer in the hot seat. I'm no longer the hit man. I'm no longer here telling you you need 8 crowns and you're going to hate me because of how much it costs and la da 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 da. This isn't my problem. You're the person that has a problem. I'm the one that's here to help you. Right? And what would you like to focus on? You tell me. It goes from us trying to sell somebody something, it reverses the role to them wanting to purchase something. I mean, in a sales model, if that makes sense. How did that feel? I wanted somebody that was coached. How did that feel as a patient or as a coachee? How did that feel to you to have them ask you what would you like to focus on? Any one person? Yes.
Surprising.
It was surprising.
Yeah, it kind of left you speechless.
It left you speechless. Did it feel good or bad?
I don't know. It felt a little.
The answer is good. No. Did it feel good or bad to you? It was unusual.
It was unusual.
Shocking.
Yeah, but it was like, wow.
Wow. They really cared. Right. Think about that, how that might feel to your patients. What if we started asking them what's important to them? What do you want to focus on? And did the phrase, tell me more about that, did anybody use that phrase? Hand up. And how did that feel?
For me, asking the question?
Oh, yeah, sure. Tell me more about that.
It's good. It's inviting and engaging.
Inviting, engaging, and you got more information out, and you didn't feel like you were like being judgmental or, you know.
Yes.
Jim, would you like to answer how'd that feel as the patient when she said, tell me more about that?
It was kind of like I was on the spot.
It's kind of like you were on the spot. So you felt a little on the spot yet. Okay. Cool. So those are 2 skills that I want you to, wow, that's it. Those are two phrases, just write them down. And so now here's a behavioral thing. How are you going to remember to try these 2 new phrases on Monday? I want you right now to write down how I'm going to remember. For me, it would be, all I have to do is tell Annette. Every time you hear me say this, kick me and say, that's interesting. Dr. Kutsch, what do you think the patient would like to focus on? That was very interesting. Dr. Kutsch, shouldn't the patient tell you more about that? You know, for me, it would be either to put that into my system, I think some people relate to that, or write a note and put it behind on the chart, you know, put it on the wall. You know, so that, and once you start using this language, every time, the next time you use it, it gets easier. But if you don't commit today, and work in your mind how I'm going to use this phrase, instead of saying hi, and it might be the trigger of every time I say hi, I'm going to say, what would you like to focus on today? Rather than say, hi, how are you? Hi, how can I help you today? Hi, what are you here for? Hi, what seems to be the problem? I can think of 100 phrases, but rather than say that, for me, that would be the trigger of every time I say hi, I think, what would you like to focus on today? Make sense? Write it down, whatever it is that works for you, because I want to know how would you solve this for you. Because if I can help you figure that out, you'll be able to make that behavioral change. And I'd love to hear from you as you start trying some of these things. Ferocia and I are going to do some coaching programs, some workshops next year, probably in Portland, Oregon. If you want more information about that, you can contact me or Ferocia. We'd like to actually teach this skill to entire teams. So I think it's going to be most effective for us if everybody in the office has that same common language. How does this all come together in my practice? I use those forms of biometric. Obviously, I use this product. And I'm going to leave you with 2 words, and then I have one thing I want to share with you before I leave. My good friend, Mickey Ortiz, he's a dentist. Well, he's my compadre. He's in Ensenada. Taught me this. I'm going to share with you 2 words that will open many doors for you in your life. Push and pull. I've written a book on Bob Bowers, and I wrote a book on dental caries. It's called Balance. You can get a copy either at the booth, the Carie Free booth, or if you'll write to call Carie Free, we'd be happy to send you a copy. I share it with patients. I'd invite you to read that if you want to learn more about dental caries itself, what drives the disease. And then last thing is just we created, I think you have a thing in front of you from Carie Free that it's called the Breakthrough Box. If you haven't done any of this stuff, there's a video in there, there's a couple copies of the book, there's some samples of the product if you want to try them. This is free to you for attending and being here today, so I'd invite you to get a Breakthrough Box and take a look at that. Any questions before we wrap up today? Yes, Dr. Coleman.
Our thorough pH of water, so the first thing goes to my mind is maybe I should have a pH meter at the front desk.
Maybe we should have a pH meter or even just paper, right?
Paper better?
No, the pH meter is more accurate, right? But if you just had something at the front desk, it might help patients identify maybe what they're drinking with their water. Open the conversation. That's a great comment.
Specific models or brands, paper or...
Nah, I mean, I would just go to a health food store. You can get them to, yep. All right, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.